podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance? Of course you would. And when it comes to great rates on insurance, Geico can help. Like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners or renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more, and Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com or contact your local agent today.
Welcome to an 1865 podcast extra, focusing upon our Premier League predictions. In a few minutes, we're going to hear from Australian Premier League podcast Perth De La Prem with their thoughts on how Forest are going to do. But first, here's something we couldn't fit into our pre-season preview podcast as we speak to Stephen, Tom and the Maradon the Midlands about their predictions for the top 4 and bottom 3. And we'll also hear from Adam and Jeremy. Enjoy! Time to put our panel onto the spot and find out their Premier League predictions. So we're just going to ask you who's going to win the league, who's going to finish second, and who's going to fill those dreaded relegation places. Tom, let's start with you.
So my top 4, I think Liverpool will win the league because I think they've recruited really well. Man City, I think they're going to now they've got Haaland, I think they're going to try and get try and win the Champions League for the umpteenth time. Then I think Chelsea will come strong, and with Conte at Spurs, I think they'd be the top 4. So I've got them, and I think they will be pushed quite closely by Arsenal because I think they've recruited well. My bottom 3, I think Bournemouth will go. I just don't think they've recruited. They haven't really brought many players in. I think Fulham will have their age-old problems by coming up to the Premier League and not really recruiting. And I think Leeds will go. Even though they've signed quite a lot of players, I just think Jesse Marsch is like your typical Ted Lasso type of coach. No disrespect to the Americans, but when they come over here, they don't seem to be cut out for Premier League football. So I think they will go. And I think Everton will struggle the longer they keep Frank Lampard. I don't think he's cut out for Premier League football, and I think they will struggle, and I think he will get potted around about before the World Cup starts, if not afterwards. So I think they will stay up, but I think with them losing Richarlison to Spurs, I think they will struggle this season.
And just on the topic of Everton, I was discussing with the Anfield.app podcast and saying, well, Morgan Gibbs-White, he can either come to Forest or he can, where he'll, at least there's a chance that the manager's going to still be there by the end of the season, because if he stays at Wolves or if he goes to Everton, then who knows what's going to happen. Stephen, let's go to you for your predictions.
Well, my champions are going to be Man City. I still think they are the team to beat, and they've got the experience of winning the last 2 titles. Liverpool, runners-up. I think they're going to push them close, but again, just fall short. And Spurs to finish 3rd. I think they've recruited well under Conte, and it's Conte just gets teams winning. Followed by Chelsea, and then Arsenal are in the conversation as well. So that will be my top 4. Relegation, I think Bournemouth will go, and I think they'll probably be bottom as well. I've not been too impressed with their recruitment. I think they invested everything they had in January just to get in the Premier League, and now they're here. I don't think they've got enough to recruit further and survive, and I'm not too sure about Scott Parker's credentials as a Premier League manager. So I think Bournemouth will go. I think Fulham will go as well. And it'll just be the same old story with Fulham. I think they'll try and play nice football. They'll try and attack, but they'll just get torn apart by too many teams, concede too many goals, and eventually struggle and end up relegated. My final team to be relegated is Brentford. Up until Christian Eriksen came in last season, their form had nosedived after a good start. and they looked at one point like they were going to get dragged into the relegation battle. Ericsson came in and helped to turn it around, but he's now gone to Man United, and I'm not convinced by the signings they've made so far, and I think that second season syndrome might kick in for Brentford.
Okay, and just before I come to you, Married on the Midlands, Tom wants to say something.
Yeah, Fulham keep Tim Ream in their back four. They're going to leak goals because he absolutely crapped himself when Zinkernagel ran at him and he ran into the net, basically, didn't he? And I just think he's an awful defender, and now he's in the Premier League. I just think he's going to struggle. So if Tim Ream is in their back four for the start of this season and it carries on, I think they're going to leak goals like 1-0.
Okay, well, don't hold back, will you, Tom? So, Married on the Midlands, if we ignore Tom's vendetta against our friends from over the water, what are your predictions?
I think I've heard Tim Ream speaks very highly of you, Tom. He's going to be gutted. I think I was very impressed by Liverpool in the Community Shield yesterday. They look like they're ready to go straight away. So I'll go Liverpool for the league, City second, Tottenham third. I'm not sure about fourth. It could be any of the three already mentioned: Arsenal, Man U, or Chelsea. I'm not sure about that one. Relegation-wise, I agree with the others. Bournemouth don't look like they strengthened enough that they're down. I'll go slightly different. I'll say Southampton, because they've keep on sort of falling off a cliff, their form over the last few years, and I think that's going to catch up with them.
Again, small squad.
Yeah. And the third one, I'm not sure. I'm thinking either Brentford for the reasons Stephen's given, or don't know what. I've just got a sneaky feeling for Leicester City. I think it's just something's not quite right there, and they might not go down, but I think they're going to struggle this year.
Well, they've not got any money, and their squad is worse than it was last season, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, they were banking on selling Yo Tielemans for big money, and that's not happened, and they're going to be wheeling out Jamie Vardy again, and they can't defend set pieces. I mean, they were pretty awful last season. We saw when we played them in the FA Cup, they were awful, and I know they're going to get Wesley Fofana back, but I think it's an aging back four as well, because obviously you got Schmeichel, who might be going if they get a replacement. You got Johnny Evans, who is getting on a bit and can't keep fit, and I think they're like, if you look at the predictions from Leicester fans, I think they're like putting all their eggs in one basket of having a good season from James Maddison again, but he can't do it himself. So I think they, like I says, they were banking on using Yo Tielemans' money to actually revamp their squad, and it hasn't happened. And I've got a funny feeling Rodgers may be one of the first managers to get potted along with Frank Lampard this season. He was rumoured wanting out last year for whatever jobs were coming up, and I just think he might be coming to the end of his cycle at Leicester.
Job swap?
No. I don't. I'm not going anywhere near their wannabe rivals. So,
Married on the Midlands, you're also pointing out that with having Darwin up front here, it means that Liverpool are evolving.
Yeah, so it seems like a natural selection up front for me now that Sane's gone. But or is it Mane? I always get those two confused. Mane or Sane? Mane. They're both at Bayern Munich now, so that's going to get very confusing. Anyway.
Commentator's nightmare.
So for the top four, I would go with Manchester City to win the title, Liverpool second, Tottenham third, and Arsenal fourth. I worry about Chelsea this season, especially because Koundé didn't come to Chelsea, and they've had a lot of targets defensively, especially, that haven't come in. I do worry about them finishing top four. Spurs have obviously strengthened massively, so I think they will definitely finish third. And Arsenal have a young team that are just going to progress season on season. I'm fairly confident with this one.
I've always been a little uncomfortable with football predictions. I do think that the key to successfully predicting the future, as Nostradamus, Mystic Meg, and indeed Leggy 2010 World Cup sage Paul the Octopus have proven, is to be just ambiguous enough that you can claim to be right either way. Predicting league placings doesn't offer that sort of scope for ambiguity, but nevertheless, I'm going to give it a go. So top four, I'm going to go with both Manchester clubs. Bit of a controversial take, that. Liverpool and Tottenham. And bottom three, I think Bournemouth will struggle. I do think Leeds might have a tough time with the loss of Calvin Phillips becoming a permanent thing now, and Patrick Bamford set to be on the sidelines for a significant chunk of the season again. And I think Brentford might struggle with that difficult second season syndrome, particularly with the loss of Christian Eriksen. So top four, Manchester City, Manchester United, Liverpool and Tottenham, and bottom three, Bournemouth, Leeds and Brentford.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Okay, so now we are joined by Michael from the Perth De La Prem podcast. Hi, Michael. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good, mate. Looking forward to having a chat with you today or this evening, depending on where you're listening from.
Yeah, so it's lunchtime in the UK, and I think you've got your lights on in the background there. So. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so I've got just a few questions for you as a Premier League fan welcoming Forest back into the top flight. So to start off with, us Reds fans, we are very much steeped in the club's history and traditions and culture. But as a Premier League fan, how much do you know about Nottingham Forest?
Well, I've heard lots about Nottingham Forest. To be honest, last time Nottingham Forest were in the Premier League, I don't remember it. But obviously, I've heard European Cup winners, quite a big team in England in the 80s, as we've discussed as well previously. But I wouldn't say I know a whole heap about Nottingham Forest. But nostalgically, hearing things from different generations, it's really exciting to have them back in the Premier League as well.
Yeah, and it's been so heartening for us to have so many Premier League fans of all generations actually having that sense of excitement of like, well, Forest are back where they belong. It's a very easy thing for people to say, but it's actually quite nice for us to hear. So let's come to the present day. Forest have caught the eye with a necessarily busy summer of transfer activity. We've had quite a lot of players going out, players whose contracts have expired, players who have been loaned out, young players who have been loaned out. We've also had, I think, as of the time of recording, we've had 10 new signings, and there's all kinds of rumours swirling around about Jesse Lingard as we're recording at the moment. So for you, as the neutral, what do you think about the value and the profile of the signings that we've made so far?
Well, look, I think you made some excellent signings as well. And if you look at the age profile of these signings, I think that's always really important. And they're all quite young. So you look at players like Taiwo Awoniyi, Dean Henderson as well. Obviously, it's on loan, but still a very good signing. You've obviously got Omar Richards. He's had a experience abroad with Bayern Munich, a really elite club in Europe. Maybe he didn't play as much, but still an experience. Nico Williams has had experience at the top level with Liverpool. I think you made some really good signings and players that will help solidify the squad, and hopefully it will be a good balance between the players who have got you there and, players that are going to come and improve the squad. And we spoke a little bit earlier about the prices of these players as well, because they are so young. Even if you do go down next season, or even if you don't, it doesn't quite work out, they're going to have good resale value because they are young prospects coming through. So I think it's really smart business by Nottingham Forest, and obviously coming back up into the Premier League. Investment is so important in getting that right and that recruitment, because you've seen teams come up before and splash the cash, but not necessarily in a good way. You're talking about your Norwiches and your Fulhams just throwing it at all sorts of players, but maybe not having a strategic plan. It looks like Forest have targeted areas of the squad that they need. Obviously, Jed Spence isn't going to be there next season, although he was just on loan last year. Brought Nico Williams in, similar profile, as young, exciting prospects. And with Bryce Samba going, we've got Dean Henderson coming in, brought a couple of forwards in as well. So I think it's been a really smart summer so far. And yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they all fit in.
Okay, so the big one. In terms of, right, so I think for our listeners' benefit, obviously you're based in Australia. You are a Man City fan. Your podcast teammates, they are Liverpool fans. So your supporters are big clubs in another country watching the Premier League. So what do you think? Who's going to do well in the Premier League? Who's going to go down? And where do you predict the Reds to finish next season?
Oh, put me on the spot. If anyone or any of the listeners out there have managed to see our podcast, each one of us, so myself, so I'm Michael, we've got another Michael and Gareth. We all predicted Nottingham Forest as our surprise team. We've all predicted them to come up and do really, really well. A lot of it was down to the business that's been done so far. We think there's some good signings there, as I've mentioned before. And obviously I think they'll just have, that confidence coming up from where they did last season, obviously being bottom of the table at one point, and then being able to improve so drastically that they've got back to the Premier League. In terms of position next season, I think that's going to be a tough one. I could see them finishing obviously above the relegation places, probably anywhere from, I would say, 17th to 14th. And I think that would probably be a good season. I'm sure yourself and your listeners would just be happy staying in the league, because obviously once you do that, it allows you to build from there and obviously get stronger and stronger, and financially it's a better point as well. But yeah, I'd say anywhere from 17th to 14th, I think that would be roughly where I'd be next season.
Okay. And who do you think is going to win the league?
Well, we asked this last time on our podcast as well, and I said Liverpool just purely because of, last couple of seasons, it's just so, it's been so tight. Liverpool and Man City, it's been one or the other really, and it's always had a couple of tight chases. Man City have luckily enough come out of that on top. But last time we did come out on top, Liverpool managed to get over the line the following season. And I think they'll be really, really hungry to do that again. Obviously improve their squad. They've lost Mane, which would be a big loss, but you've got to constantly refresh your squad. And same thing's sort of happening at Man City now. I mean, I'm sure your listeners maybe don't have sympathy to Man City and all the riches that we've got. But we have had a lot of players go out, and players that I've been sad to see go as well. So I think maybe it's just a little bit too much change. Obviously, Raheem Sterling's left. We've seen Zinchenko go, although he wasn't necessarily a first-team player. He's been a really important squad player. And Jesus as well, he's left. So it's players that have been really pivotal in our success. And yes, we signed Erling Haaland, but so obviously, again, like I've mentioned about transfers, there's not necessarily any guarantees there.
Thank you very much, Michael. Just to finish off, where can our listeners find your podcast?
Yeah, so we're on Facebook and Twitter at Perth De La Prem. We're also on Spotify, same handle, Perth De La Prem, SoundCloud, and Podbean, Perth De La Prem as well. So give us a listen if you want to hear all things Premier League.
Thank you very much to Michael and, of course, to our regular pundits for their Premier League predictions. We'll be back with some Newcastle previews. Keep an eye on our social media for those. And we will also be giving you match reports on every single Forest match this season, with views from the opposition as well as our view as Reds fans. You can find all of the links if you go to our main page, 1865.football, and you can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok and Facebook. Do join us this season, it's going to be quite the ride.
Sports Social Podcast Network.